Hey there, my name's Harold Finch, and welcome to my impression of the Persona 5 Scramble The Phantom Strikers demo. I was actually really surprised by the announcement of this one. A Persona Musou game? Awesome! A Persona 5 sequel? Awesome! Even if I wasn't a big fan of the original Persona 5 story, as I didn't enjoy some of the elements of the story, I thought the gameplay was phenomenal and the characters were endearing, and in general, I loved Persona 5. So getting to get a hands-on with the demo was really cool for me, even if it was in Japanese, the language I only kinda understand. Anyway, let's jump right into it. It's time to steal some hearts. In the event you aren't aware, Persona 5 Scramble is a Musou game developed by Omega Force and P Studio, releasing on the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. If you aren't familiar with Koei Tecmo's Dynasty Warrior series, or just the Warrior series in general, you might be asking yourself, what's a Musou game? Well, they're open-world beat-em-up hack-and-slash games, which is exactly what this is, but this has a little role-playing thrown into the mix. This game takes place 6 months after the end of Persona 5. Not really sure if this is supposed to take place after the base Persona 5 or Persona 5 The Royal, which is having its English release coming out on March 31st, 2020, but they might just end up, avoiding that question entirely in the actual story. But I digress. The story once again follows Joker and the Phantom Thieves on their next adventure, which seems to be a summer road trip. Unlike Persona 5, we'll be exploring different towns, which is super exciting in my opinion. The demo was just a little over an hour long and gave me a general idea of how Scramble is shaping up to be. I took a look at the demo on the Nintendo Switch and the PS4, so let's talk graphics first, shall we? Graphically, I thought the demo was great. The character models look great, and seeing dozens of well-detailed enemies on screen is always a treat. On the PS4, the game is running a silky smooth 60 FPS, and on the Switch, it's running a smooth 30 FPS. However, it did feel like it dropped once when I was exploring the underground section later in the demo on the Switch for about 2 to 3 seconds, and it dropped to about 20 FPS. However, this is the exception and not the rule on the Switch. The environment you get to explore in the demo looked great on both platforms, though, so no complaints there. The graphics are not without faults, though. As good as it can look, I did notice that there were some very noticeable anti-aliasing problems on the Switch in docked mode. This problem wasn't very noticeable for me on handheld mode, but it definitely stood out to me in docked. Another rather strange issue on the Switch version was some of the textures have some odd draw distance issues. In particular, I noticed in the Alley of Yogen Jaya that this one garage door was having some issues, though this is perhaps a little nitpicky. The resolution also seems to be roughly around 720p in docked, maybe the same in handheld, but don't quote me on that. This was noticeable in the main menu and in certain scenes. The pre-rendered stuff, like the animation cutscenes and certain in-game cinematics, looked a bit low res. But hey, if it gets the game running on the Switch, that's fine by me. Again, my complaints are probably nitpicky, and some of this could just end up being demo only. On the PS4 side of things, I did also notice the anti-aliasing problem, but not quite as bad. I was playing it on the PS4 Pro with super sampling enabled as my monitor is in 4K, and I could still make out some noticeable jaggies. But the draw distance issue that was on the Switch version wasn't prevalent there. The textures are also noticeably better, and that's to be expected. It's running on more powerful hardware. Everything in general looked better and felt smoother on the PS4, but I do hope that the anti-aliasing problem on both platforms is just a demo thing and not because they had to make sacrifices to get it on the PS4 and Switch. Could also just be a problem with Omega Force's engine, as this seems to be running on the same engine that powered Fire Emblem Three Houses, which released last year. I thought it was interesting that there were some pre-rendered in-game cutscenes this time around. Persona 5 had some similar cutscenes that were done in-engine in real time and not pre-rendered, I believe. They look great, though. On the animation side of things, there were several animated cutscenes in the demo, and they looked really good. The first anime cutscene you see is really cool, and the actual opening with the new opening music track looked really good. The animated cutscenes seem to have been done once more by Production IG, who did the original game's animated cutscenes, and it really shows. The new opening is a lot more vibrant and fast compared to the opening of Persona 5 The Royal, which seems to have been done by A1 Pictures, who did the anime adaptation of Persona 5. But I'm not sure on The Royal's opening. I'm not sure if it was actually done by A1. I couldn't find a source on who did the opening, but the way the characters were drawn and looked in The Royal's opening was similar to the anime. I do prefer Scramble's opening visually over the Royal's opening, but I do think the Royal has a better song. Moving on, let's talk audio. Sound effects wise, I thought this was great. Every hit sounded punchy, and every time you used your persona, it just sounded awesome. The one thing that really stuck out to me was the new music tracks, though. Like Persona music always is, the new music in Persona 5 Scramble is phenomenal. There's even a pretty cool rock version of Last Surprise. You never see it coming. I noticed in the demo, almost all the overworld music was just taken from base Persona 5 soundtrack. That might be intentional though, since the demo was confined to the area Persona 5 originally took place in, and this might change in the actual game once they hit the road and start the road trip to different places, where they'll hopefully sprinkle in some new overworld tracks to keep it fresh. But, even if it isn't the case, the music is still as good as it was back when I played Persona 5 in 2017. Voice acting wise, they've got the original cast back, which is awesome, and they sound like they never left, which with all the spin-offs they pretty much haven't. There's even a few new voice actors joining the cast too. The one who stood out instantly to me was Shinichiro Miki, pardon me if I absolutely just butchered that, who voices Akichi Hasegawa, a police detective investigating the Phantom Thieves. Shinichiro Miki also voices Sasaki Kojiro from Fate Stay Night, which is why he stood out to me instantly. Anyway, let's talk about the gameplay, shall we? Oh man, when it comes to the combat, I wasn't really expecting the gameplay to impress me as much as it has. I'm not a big Muso game guy. My only real experience with them being Fate Extella Link, and some Dynasty Warriors. But this doesn't even really feel like the games I listed. It definitely has their DNA put into it, obviously, but I was impressed at how much of the Persona DNA was put into it. You could swap between personas during combat and quickly use some of their skills, the guns were implemented nicely, the Phantom Thieves mobility is used to do some environmental attacks, and in general, the gameplay is just a lot of fun. I did 2 playthroughs, one on the normal on the Switch, and one on the PS4 on hard. I'd say hard is the way to play this, at least from the demo. I felt combat was a bit too easy on normal for me, but hard felt like a decent challenge and required me to use my noggin. I like how they incorporated the one more mechanic in the boss battle you get to do with the demo. It's got a stylish cinematic and it's just cool, man. I also like the Showtime mechanic where you get to do an ultimate and do just this really cool AoE. The developers really took the style Persona 5 oozed and created gameplay that was both fun and paid tribute to the style of Persona 5. Even the menus are stylish like Persona 5. It's crazy good. There's not much to say in regards to the overworld stuff, though. It's just Persona 5's overworld, really. There's no major changes that I saw, at least during my time with the demo. In regards to the story, I can't speak on the story aspect of the demo. My understanding of Japanese is limited, and I don't really want to get anything wrong or, form an opinion that's not correct because I misinterpreted something or whatever. But for what I've seen translated by Lettuce Sauce of the trailers, it's gonna be a good story. It does look rather interesting. So, anyway, if the demo is a good indicator of what Persona 5 Scramble the Phantom Strikers is shaping up to be, we're in for a fun time. I wasn't happy with how Atlus rushed out the Persona 5 spin-offs like the dancing game and Q2 before we even got the Royal, but this isn't one of those spin-offs. It's really a sequel to Persona 5, and it's great. It's going to be a very unique game in the series, and if you love the characters, the music, and just Persona in general, I think this will be up your alley when it launches in Japan on February 20th, 2020, and if you aren't importing it and are waiting for an English release, there still isn't a date yet, but hopefully it'll be later this year. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care now.